People often talk about the storms in a marriage: jealousy, shouting, betrayal. But what they don't warn you about is the silence. The soft kind. The kind that slips in unnoticed, settles between the dishes and the evening news, and one day you realize it's been there for years. That's where we are, my husband and I. Still. Comfortable. Predictable. I wake up each morning to the sound of his coffee machine whirring in the kitchen. He always makes mine just right. 2 sugars, a splash of cream. I hear the low hum of the radio, the rustle of the newspaper, the clink of his spoon. I know every sound in our home, every rhythm. I know him. Tom is a good man, better than most. He folds his socks. He doesn't raise his voice. He always fills up my car when the tank's low and warms up the bathroom on cold mornings. And I love him. I do. But I've stopped feeling him. There are moments, tiny ones, when I catch myself wondering if this is all life will be. A perfect cup of coffee. A polite kiss on the cheek. The same dinners, the same jokes, the same cautious touch in bed that feels more like obligation than hunger. I used to feel seen, noticed, wanted. Now, I feel safe, like a picture tucked inside an old frame, preserved but never opened. I haven't said any of this aloud, not even to myself until recently. It feels like betrayal just to admit it. Because what kind of woman feels hollow in the middle of a good man's love? Maybe it's aging. Maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's the quiet grief of a life that never asked for more. Or maybe, just maybe, it's me. I don't look at other men. I don't flirt. I don't entertain fantasies. But lately, when I see women on the street laughing a little too loudly or wearing something bold and careless, I feel this ache, like they're living a version of life that slipped past me while I was too busy being stable. There's a photo of us on the living room wall, Tom and I, taken on our honeymoon. I'm leaning into him, smiling like I had no idea what forever actually meant. Back then, forever felt like a promise. Now it feels like a hallway with no doors. Still, I smile when he talks. I ask about his day. I lay beside him at night and listen to the hum of his breath until I fall asleep. I keep being the woman I promised to be, the good wife. But somewhere underneath it all, something is shifting. Quietly, like a hairline crack in glass. And I don't know what it means yet, but I feel it. It began the way most things do in quiet lives, with something small. A new face. A different tone. A moment that should have passed unnoticed, but didn't. His name was Daniel. He wasn't striking in the way men are in movies. No sharp suit or brooding stare. But he had this calm confidence, the kind that made you feel like he saw you even in a crowded room. He was a photographer, contracted to shoot the spring event for the nonprofit where I volunteer twice a week. We were introduced over a tray of lemon bars. I remember that clearly, how I laughed when he said they looked like squares of sunshine with diabetes. It wasn't even that funny, but I laughed like I hadn't in months. I laughed like I wanted to. He was easy to talk to, effortless. We chatted about light, angles, how people's real selves only show when they think no one's watching. It was the kind of conversation that floats, unburdened by time or duty. When I got home that evening, Tom asked about my day. I told him it was fine. I didn't mention Daniel. Why would I? It was just a conversation. Just a laugh. But the next week, Daniel was there again. And the next. Soon, I started looking forward to Wednesdays more than I should have. I took extra care brushing my hair. I wore lipstick I hadn't touched in years. Nothing bold, just a subtle shade called Rosewood Kiss. Fitting. We never spoke of anything improper. Nothing crossed a line. But there were moments, small, sharp ones, that made the air feel different when he was near. Like when he said, "You always look like you're holding something back. I bet you're fire when no one's looking." Or the way his eyes lingered, not disrespectfully but curiously, like I was a page he wanted to keep reading. And God help me, I felt it. Something waking up. Something I had long buried beneath meal plans, folded laundry, and polite affection. At night, I would lie beside Tom, our legs brushing under the sheets, and I'd wonder when I last felt a flutter from his touch. I'd trace the pattern of our ceiling and ask myself, Why do I feel more alive in a stranger's glance than in my own husband's arms? And still I told myself it was nothing, that I was tired, that I was imagining it, that I was a fool for needing more when I already had enough. But it grew, like warmth under skin, like a melody I couldn't stop humming. I began to notice things I hadn't before. How Daniel always waited a beat longer when I said goodbye, as if he wanted to say something else. How his eyes softened when I smiled. How I started avoiding mirrors, not because I didn't like what I saw, but because I did, and it made me feel dangerous. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something. Something that made my chest ache and my conscience stir. And though no boundary had been broken, I had already crossed a line. In thought, in feeling, in wanting. It happened gradually. Not in a single moment, but in many quiet ones strung together like beads on a thread, each one small enough to dismiss, but together forming something I could no longer ignore. Daniel and I began talking more often, sometimes after the meetings, sometimes through messages. Harmless. At first, links to articles, little jokes, casual thoughts. But soon, they became longer. Later, closer. I started guarding my phone. Not out of guilt. At least, that's what I told myself, but out of preservation. Like the messages were a part of me, I didn't want diluted by explanation. One afternoon, we got caught in a sudden downpour after a volunteer event. Everyone scattered, laughing and shouting, but Daniel and I lingered under the narrow overhang of the building's entrance. We were soaked. My hair clung to my face. I was laughing, breathless, and when I looked up at him, something in his eyes changed. He didn't move closer. He didn't touch me. But in that moment, I knew we were no longer pretending. "You look like someone who's remembering who she used to be," he said. I swallowed hard. My laughter stilled. I didn't say anything, but something cracked open inside me. It wasn't long after that. A Tuesday. Late. Tom had fallen asleep on the couch, the TV still humming. My phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "I can't stop thinking about the way you looked in the rain." I should have ignored it. I knew I should. Instead, I typed back, "I haven't laughed like that in years." There was a pause. Then, "Come see the studio sometime. I'd love to show you what I'm working on." I stared at the screen. My heart thudded, traitorous and loud. My hands trembled. And still, I typed. When? The studio was small, walls lined with prints, light pouring in from a wide window. There was nothing seductive about it. No candles, no wine. Just space and warmth and him. We talked for hours. About art. About silence. About how people forget to touch beauty once they settle into routine. He offered me tea. I said yes. He showed me his recent work, portraits of people caught in ordinary moments that looked anything but ordinary. There was intimacy in his gaze, even as a photographer. It made me wonder what he saw when he looked at me. At one point, I leaned in to see a photo up close. I could feel him behind me, close, but not touching. The air thickened. And then it happened. Not abrupt. Not dramatic. A slow, inevitable pull. His hand brushed mine. I didn't move. His other hand found my face. Gently, reverently. And then his lips met mine. It wasn't lustful. It wasn't wild. It was aching. Careful. Full of everything I didn't know I was starving for. I didn't stop him. I didn't want to. The rest blurred. Not in memory, but in feeling. There were no clothes torn, no frenzied movements, only skin against skin, slow and searching. There was tenderness, reverence, guilt laced with longing. I felt more seen in those few hours than I had in years. And afterward, I cried. Not because I regretted it, but because I didn't. That night, I came home quietly. Tom was in bed, the room dark except for the hallway light I always left on. He stirred when I climbed in beside him. "Everything okay?" he mumbled. "Yeah," I whispered. "Just tired." He reached for my hand under the blanket and held it. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my skin still humming with memory, my chest torn between two lives. I had crossed the line, and part of me felt like I had just remembered what it meant to feel alive. The other part felt like something inside me had shattered. Time passed. Days blurred. Life outside continued as if nothing had changed. But I was no longer the woman in that studio, but I couldn't return to being the woman in this home either. I existed somewhere in between, suspended, like a fragile thread pulled tight between two lives. I started seeing Daniel less. I told myself, it was just a moment. But moments whisper. They don't disappear. They linger. They remind you. Tom didn't change. He still made my coffee with 2 sugars. Still asked about my day. Still slept next to me, shoulder to shoulder. He never suspected a thing, but I could feel him sensing the quiet shift in me. Sometimes he looked at me too long, searching my face like he was trying to read something I wasn't saying. And I wasn't lying, but I wasn't telling the truth either. One night, while we were watching a film, he spoke softly. Lately, it feels like you're here, but somewhere else too. I smiled, masking the tremble behind my teeth. I've just been tired. My mind's been busy. He nodded, but I swallowed something sharp. What I wanted to say was, I've been thinking about another man, and it doesn't mean I love you less, just differently. I knew both worlds now. Tom, steady, loyal, warm. Daniel, wild, electric, consuming. Staying with Tom meant holding on to safety and swallowing the ache. Leaving for Daniel meant burning the life I'd built to chase the heat of something unknown. But I loved them both, in completely different, dangerous ways. Sometimes I'd look at myself in the mirror and wonder, who am I now? The good wife? The traitor? A restless soul? Or just a woman who forgot how to feel? There was no answer, only silence. And so here I am. Neither of them is with me tonight. I'm alone. Daniel told me, I want you, all of you. No more halves. Tom said just yesterday, I don't want to lose you. And I said nothing. I sit by the window now, watching people pass below. The sky is gray. My heart is loud and lost. I love them both. Differently. Dangerously. And now, I don't know where I belong.